On Thanksgiving Day, my millionaire son came to visit and asked, "Dad, is the $8,000 my wife sends every month enough for your treatment?" I was surprised and replied, "Son, only the church helps me with my treatment. I don't receive any money." And just then, his wife walked into the room. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. Florence wrinkled her nose the moment she stepped through my front door. "Eugene, look at this carpet. When was this installed? The 1980s. She trailed one manicured finger along the back of my sofa, examining the dust like a health inspector. "And that smell? Porter, have you considered assisted living? They have wonderful facilities now." I straightened my flannel shirt, kept my voice level. "This is my home, Florence, the one your husband grew up in." "Well, things change. People downsize. It's practical." She set down her designer purse, probably cost more than my monthly pension, and surveyed my living room with the expression of someone touring a condemned building. 8 months. That's how long it had been since I'd seen my son. I'd watched from the window as the rented Tesla pulled up, silver and sleek, looking like a spaceship next to Mrs. Chen's rusted Civic across the street. Eugene stepped out carrying a wine bottle with a price tag I could read from 20 feet away. $200. He glanced at the house and something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or just exhaustion. I'd spent the morning preparing Thanksgiving dinner with what I had: turkey donated by St. Christopher's Food Program, instant mashed potatoes, canned gravy. The mismatched plates on my dining table told their own story, each one a survivor from different decades. My hands had trembled slightly arranging them, though whether from nerves or my heart condition, I couldn't say. "Dad." Eugene embraced me at the door, and for a moment, I felt the boy I'd raised, not the San Francisco tech executive he'd become. "You look good." We both knew that was generous. At the table, I tried to bridge the distance. "The church has been helping with my medication costs. The cardiac specialist bills." Florence cut in, phone already in her hand. "Oh, Porter, you'd love our new place. The kitchen alone was $300,000, marble from Italy. Eugene, show your father the photos." Eugene shifted uncomfortably. "Florence, Dad was saying he'll want to see this. The guest house is bigger than most apartments." She swiped through images of gleaming countertops and infinity pools, her voice bright with the kind of enthusiasm she never showed for anything in my house. I picked at my turkey, watching Eugene remove his smartwatch and set it beside his plate. The gesture felt symbolic somehow, like he was trying to shed the weight of his wealth, if only for an hour. Florence dominated the conversation, rattling off renovation costs and wine cellar specifications, while my food grew cold. When I mentioned my recent hospital visit, $12,000 for cardiac tests I was still paying off in installments, she barely paused. "That reminds me, we're thinking of adding a home gym, Peloton, full weights, maybe a sauna." Then her phone rang, loud and shrill in my small dining room. Florence jumped, actually jumped, nearly knocking over her water glass. She grabbed the phone like it was burning her palm, checked the screen, with eyes gone suddenly wide. "I need to take this." Her voice had changed, gone tight and thin. "It's the charity board. They're voting on the gala location." Eugene frowned. "On Thanksgiving? Nonprofits don't take holidays, Eugene." She was already standing, already moving toward the hallway. I watched her go, watched the stiffness in her shoulders, the way she clutched that phone. Something wasn't right. 30 years as a fire chief teaches you to notice when things don't add up, when the scene doesn't match the story. Alone with Eugene for the first time all afternoon, I saw how tired he looked. Not just physically tired, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying weight you can't name. "Dad." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I need to ask you something." The room felt suddenly heavier, the air thick. "The $8,000 Florence sends you every month for your medical care. Is it enough? Do you need more?" My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I set it down carefully, precisely, the way I'd learned to move at disaster scenes. "What money, son?" Eugene's eyebrows drew together. "The monthly transfers, for your heart medication, doctor visits, all of it." "Eugene." I kept my voice steady, though my pulse had started to hammer. "I don't receive any money from you, not a cent." His face went blank. "That's not possible. I've been sending it for 5 years, every month without fail." 5 years. I did the math instantly, automatically. Eugene, my pension is $2,100 a month. The church gives me $300 for medications. That's all I have. The color drained from his face like someone had opened a valve. But Florence set up the account. She handles all our charitable giving, the Porter Kennedy Trust account. Trust account. The words hung between us like smoke. From the hallway, I could hear Florence's voice, low and urgent, speaking too quickly. Eugene pulled out his phone, fingers moving across the screen. His hands shook slightly. I'm looking at the transfers right now. 60 months, $8,000 each, all marked Porter Kennedy Trust, medical. My chest tightened, a familiar sensation, warning me to breathe slowly, stay calm. But my mind was racing, calculating, investigating. $480,000. That's what Eugene had been sending. That's what I'd never seen. Florence's footsteps echoed in the hallway, growing louder. Eugene stared at his phone screen, then at me. His expression held confusion, disbelief, and something darker creeping in at the edges. Eugene, I said quietly, I've never seen $1 of that money. The footsteps grew louder. Eugene's face had gone white. Florence appeared in the doorway, her face flushed, phone clutched in one hand. What's going on? Her voice came out artificially bright, but her eyes darted between Eugene's pale face and mine. The air in my dining room felt charged, dangerous. Eugene didn't look up from his phone. Florence, explain this. Why is there a trust account in Dad's name that he knows nothing about? Her laugh came too loud, too forced. Porter, sweetheart, you're confused. The account I set up for your medical expenses, remember? I stood slowly, walked to the kitchen, pulled open the drawer where I kept my financial records. The manila folder labeled 2024 Financial sat exactly where I'd filed it last week. I brought it back to the table, spread the bank statements out methodically, pointing to each line. I've never been confused about money, Florence. I was a fire chief. I managed department budgets for 30 years. Pension deposits, $2,100. St. Christopher's Community Fund, $300. Nothing else. Eugene turned his phone screen toward her. I'm looking at 60 months of transfers, $8,000 each, all to the Porter Kennedy Trust account. Florence's hand went to her throat. She set her phone down too carefully on the edge of the table, wouldn't meet his eyes. Of course he received them. Porter, don't you remember signing the paperwork? What's the account number? Eugene's voice had changed, gone hard and flat. Let's call the bank right now and verify. Her fingers found her expensive bracelet, twisted it. It's in Porter's name, so I can't access the details, privacy laws. You just said you set it up. Which is it? I mean, she was talking faster now, tripping over her words. It's an investment account for his future medical needs. The money grows tax-free until he needs it. I never signed any investment account paperwork. I kept my voice level, factual. The pain in my chest was building, sharp and insistent, but I pressed my left hand flat against the table edge, regulated my breathing the way they'd taught me in cardiac rehab. In through the nose, 4 counts. Out through the mouth, 6 counts. Not now. I wouldn't show weakness, not in front of her. Eugene stood, and I'd never seen my diplomatic son look like this. Jaw clenched, finger jabbing toward his wife. The money grows tax-free, then where are the statements? Where's the documentation? Florence's story shifted again. It's for future expenses, major surgeries, the kind of care your father will need as he ages. $8,000 a month for 5 years. Eugene's voice had gone hollow. That's $480,000. I said it quietly, precisely. He turned to me. You knew the exact number. I calculated it the moment you mentioned the amount. Old habit from the fire service. Assess damages immediately. The pain in my chest sharpened. I breathed through it, didn't reach for the nitroglycerin tablet in my pocket. 30 years of running into burning buildings had taught me not to show fear, not to reveal vulnerability when predators were watching. Florence's eyes were wet now, mascara starting to smudge. You're both ganging up on me. I've done everything for this family. Your father is old. He forgets things. He just calculated 5 years of transfers in his head. Eugene's voice cut through her tears like a blade. He's not the one who's confused. Fine. Her voice went shrill, desperate. You want to believe him over your wife? The woman who gave you a daughter? Eugene moved between us physically, his body blocking her line of sight to me. "Don't you dare use Emily in this. Where is the money, Florence?" The silence stretched. Florence touched her bracelet again, that nervous tell. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed completely, gone cold and venomous. "You'll regret this, old man. Both of you." I gripped the table edge harder. The pain was subsiding now, my breathing technique working. Eugene noticed anyway. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I straightened. "Eugene, take her and leave. You need time to process this." "I should stay." "No, go to a hotel. Check the account records. Tomorrow, we'll talk about what happens next." Florence grabbed her designer purse, fumbled with the clasp. Eugene took his jacket but left the wine bottle on my counter, that $200 symbol of a different world. At the door, he embraced me, whispered in my ear, "I'm sorry, Dad. I'll make this right." I stood in the doorway, watching the Tesla's taillights disappear down my street, red dots fading into the November darkness. Then I closed the door, locked it, leaned against it until my heart rate settled. The house felt different now, quieter, colder. But my mind was working, turning over the facts like evidence at an investigation scene. $480,000, 5 years of theft. Florence's panicked phone call, her contradictory stories, her threats. I walked back to the dining room, gathered the bank statements, spread them across my coffee table. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. Mrs. Chen's living room glowed warm across the street. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. I'd spent 30 years figuring out how fires started, tracing burn patterns, analyzing accelerants, reconstructing timelines from ash and char. Now, I needed to understand how my money disappeared, where it went, who else knew, and how to get it back. Friday morning came cold and gray. I sat at my dining room table, the same bank statement still spread before me, now joined by a yellow legal pad covered in notes. Sleep had come in fragments. Old habits from the fire service wouldn't let me rest when there was an investigation to conduct. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, untouched. I picked up my phone. The bank representative in San Francisco answered on the third ring, professional, cautious. "I'm calling regarding the Porter Kennedy Trust account," I said, keeping my voice level. "I believe I'm the beneficiary." "I'll need to verify your identity, sir. Can you provide the account number?" "I don't have it. My son opened the account for my benefit, but I've never received statements." A pause, keys clicking. "Sir, according to our records, you're listed as the trust's namesake, but Florence Morales Kennedy is the sole account manager and beneficiary. You have no access rights." The words confirmed what I already suspected, but hearing them made my chest tighten. "I see. Thank you for clarifying that. Is there anything else I can help?" I ended the call. Sole beneficiary. Florence had built the theft into the account structure itself. Eugene's email arrived 20 minutes later. 247 pages of account statements, wire transfer records, Florence's signatures on opening documents. I stared at my home printer, broken for 8 months, no money for ink cartridges anyway. The library opened at 10. The walk took 15 minutes. November wind cut through my thin jacket, the one I'd worn since selling my winter coat last year to pay the electric bill. The free library branch on Frankfurt Avenue smelled like old books and floor polish. I waited while the printer churned out page after page, watching the counter climb. 247 pages at 10 cents each, $24.70. I counted out exact change from the jar I kept by my front door, mostly quarters, some dimes, 3 crumpled dollar bills. Back home, I spread the pages across my living room floor, organized them chronologically, marking patterns with highlighters I'd bought at the dollar store, yellow for withdrawals, pink for transfers, green for Florence's personal account deposits. The pattern emerged like fire origin points in an arson investigation, clear, deliberate, systematic. My old laptop took 3 minutes to boot up. I opened a spreadsheet, started entering data. Each transaction got categorized: personal luxury, travel, entertainment, golf club, unknown. Decades of managing fire department budgets made the work automatic. My fingers remembered how to build case files. The numbers told a story Florence never wanted anyone to read. Her mess purchases, $47,000. Jewelry from Tiffany, $63,000. Pacific Heights. Golf club membership, $85,000 initiation, plus $12,000 annual dues for 4 years, $3,000 to $5,000 withdrawals every few weeks, always to her Chase account. None of it, not a single transaction, went toward medical expenses. Saturday, Eugene called. His voice sounded hollowed out. "Dad, I found something else. Documents in Florence's home office." "What kind of documents?" "Property transfer papers for your house to Clara Morales." I went still. "When?" "Last November. They're dated November 15th, 2023. There's a note in Florence's handwriting. P wouldn't sign, follow-up required." I remembered those papers. Florence had brought them during a brief visit, barely stayed an hour, said they were Medicare qualification forms that I needed to sign for better prescription coverage. I'd started reading, got confused by the legal language, set them aside. She'd left without mentioning them again. "I still have them," I said. "In my drawer, unsigned." Eugene exhaled sharply. "If you'd signed, you would have lost your house." She tried to take everything. My voice came out flat, cold. "The money, the house, what else?" "I'm going through everything now. There's more, Dad. I know there's more." Sunday morning, I realized I hadn't seen Clara in days. She usually emerged from the guest room around 8, criticizing my breakfast or complaining about the heating. I knocked on her door. No answer. Checked inside. Her expensive luggage still there, designer clothes hanging in the closet, makeup covering my deceased wife's old dresser. But Clara herself was gone. On the kitchen counter, half hidden under a grocery store flyer, I found a note in her precise handwriting. Visiting Florence in California for the week. She'd left the day after Thanksgiving. Hadn't said goodbye. Hadn't even told me she was going. I searched her room methodically, careful not to disturb anything. Found a stack of mail addressed to Clara Morales at my address. Credit card bills showing $20,000 balances. A BMW lease statement for $380 monthly. She'd been using my home as her legal residence while living off my son's stolen money. By Sunday evening, my dining room looked like an incident command center. Documents taped to the wall in chronological order. Red marker lines connecting withdrawals to purchases. I'd taken photos with my phone, preserving the layout in case I needed to recreate it. Eugene called again. "How long has Clara been living with you?" 3 years. Florence said Clara needed help after her divorce, that it would be temporary. "She's been treating you okay?" I paused. "She treats me like I'm an inconvenience in my own home. That ends now. I'm coming back to Philadelphia next week. We're fixing this." "I need a lawyer, Eugene. I don't know any lawyers." "I'll find you the best family attorney in Philadelphia." After we hung up, I stood looking at my investigation wall. I had evidence, 480 pages of it, organized, categorized, documented. But evidence without strategy is just paper. I checked my savings account online, $350.43. Monday morning, I would need more than documentation. I would need a weapon. Monday morning, December 2nd. I stood outside the Community Legal Services office on Walnut Street, my folder of documents thick under my arm. 2 buses to get here, the Market Frankford line from Girard Station. Transfer to the 21. 45 minutes watching people. A young mother with twins, an elderly man with a walker, working people heading to jobs. My people. Not Florence's world of luxury and theft. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Mismatched chairs held people with tired faces, waiting for justice they couldn't afford. A receptionist called my name. I followed her down a hallway lined with motivational posters about dignity and rights. Howard Mason's office was small, cluttered with case files, law books stacked on every surface. Mason looked 52, maybe 55, weary eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, rumpled suit that had seen better days. He gestured to a chair. "Mr. Kennedy, you mentioned a family matter involving significant funds." I spread my materials across his desk. The spreadsheet, bank statements, photographs of my investigation wall, the unsigned house transfer documents, organized, chronological, color-coded. Mason's eyebrows rose as he reviewed each page. "This is better documentation than most lawyers provide," he said finally. "You built a complete case file. 32 years as a fire chief. You learned to follow evidence trails, money or fire, the principle is the same. Most clients come in with a shoebox of random receipts." He tapped my spreadsheet. You've built a prosecutable case file. I want Florence prosecuted. Can we do that? Mason sighed, leaned back. Criminally, probably not. Technically, your son sent the money voluntarily. Florence created an account with his permission. She'll argue it was a family fund, that she managed it for everyone's benefit. No medical expenses appear in those statements, not one, which is why we can win a civil case for unjust enrichment. We prove the money was designated for you. She took it for herself. Equity demands she return it. How long does that take? 6 to 9 months if we move aggressively. 6 to 9 months. I thought about my heating bill due in 2 weeks, my nearly empty savings, the heart medication refill I needed next month. What are my options? Mason outlined the strategy. Unjust enrichment. Florence received money meant for someone else. Constructive trust. A court could order return of wrongfully held assets. Conversion. Unauthorized use of designated funds. Also, eviction of Clara under Pennsylvania ejectment statutes. She had no lease, no ownership interest. I could remove her legally. What does this cost? I asked. My normal rate is $400 an hour. He must have seen my face change. But the clinic has a contingency program for compelling cases. I can take 30% of any money recovered, plus you pay court filing fees, $400 up front. I opened my savings account statement, turned it so he could see. $350.43. Mason studied the number. Quiet moment. Pay me $350 now as a retainer. I'll cover the filing fees and take it from the settlement. I don't want charity, Mr. Mason. It's not charity. It's an investment. I believe we'll win, and 30% of $480,000 makes this worthwhile for my firm. I wrote the check. My hand hesitated. This was every dollar I had. Heating bill due in 2 weeks, $180. Groceries running low. Heart medication, $90. But I looked at those unsigned house transfer documents on Mason's desk, remembered Florence's contempt, Clara's presence in my home. I signed firmly. My phone rang. Eugene. "Excuse me," I told Mason, stepped into the hallway. "Son, what's wrong?" "Dad." His voice was shaking. "Florence filed for divorce. She wants $5 million and full custody of Emily." I leaned against the wall. "Can she get it?" "I don't know. She's claiming I chose you over my family, that I'm mentally unstable for believing your accusations." "Eugene, listen carefully." I used my fire chief command voice, clear, authoritative, calming. "Hire the best family attorney in San Francisco today, not tomorrow, today." "She won't let me see Emily. She changed the locks on our house." "Document that. Record everything. The court needs to see she's using your daughter as a weapon." After the call, I stood with my forehead against the cool wall, breathed slowly, then returned to Mason's office. "Your daughter-in-law," Mason asked, "filed for divorce. $5 million, full custody of their 5-year-old daughter. She's attacking my son to pressure him into dropping my case." Mason nodded slowly. "She's smart. She knows your case threatens her, so she's attacking where he's vulnerable. His child. Will it work? Depends on Eugene. If he drops your case to appease her, she wins everything. If he fights, we can coordinate. Your civil case damages her credibility in the divorce proceedings. She underestimates my son. He won't abandon his daughter or his father. Then we need to move fast. File the civil suit this week, the eviction notice for Clara immediately. Do it, all of it." We spent 2 hours planning. Mason sketched strategies on a whiteboard, flowcharts showing the civil case progression, eviction timeline, potential outcomes. I asked questions about precedent, timing, costs. We created a battle plan with specific dates, filings, objectives. I photographed the whiteboard before leaving. Mason prepared documents while I watched. Civil complaint for unjust enrichment, petition for constructive trust, ejectment notice for Clara Morales. Each page, another weapon. "This will get ugly," Mason said as I stood to leave. "She'll fight back hard." I shook his hand firmly. "She already started the fight when she stole from my son. I'm just finishing it." I walked out of Mason's office into the cold December afternoon, carrying copies of the lawsuits we'd file within days. The bus ride home took 45 minutes. I watched the city pass, row houses and corner stores, working neighborhoods where people struggled and survived. Florence's world was about to get much smaller. 2 weeks passed in careful preparation. Mason and I worked through affidavits, evidence compilation, legal documents drafted and reviewed until every word carried weight. Mid-December arrived with early darkness and bitter cold. I stood in the Philadelphia Police 26th District Station on Girard Avenue, handing a 3-ring binder to Detective Sarah Chen at the Financial Crimes Unit desk. Behind me, Mason carried additional documentation. We'd rehearsed this moment. Detective Chen flipped through the tab sections: timeline, bank records, expenditures, correspondence, property documents. Her initial expression shifted from dismissive to professionally interested. "Mr. Kennedy, you understand family financial disputes rarely result in criminal charges?" "I understand, but this isn't a dispute. This is systematic theft over 5 years, documented with bank records." Mason added context, pointing to specific transactions. The defendant was sole manager and beneficiary of a trust supposedly for his father's medical care. Not $1 reached Mr. Kennedy. Chen studied the Delaware trust documents, the withdrawal patterns, the luxury expenditures. "You never had access to this account?" "I didn't know the account existed until 2 weeks ago." She assigned a case number, typed notes into her system. "This may not lead to prosecution, but it creates an official record. If nothing else, this will matter in civil court." 3 days later, a process server delivered our civil lawsuit to Florence in San Francisco. The claim, $480,000 principal, plus $120,000 in interest at 5% annually, legal fees, punitive damages, total demand, $650,000. The lawsuit detailed every luxury purchase, every withdrawal, every lie. That evening, my landline rang at 9 p.m. Florence's voice exploded through the receiver before I could finish saying hello. "How dare you, you miserable old man! You're destroying my family because you're jealous of our success." I placed the phone on speaker, started recording on my cell phone. Pennsylvania requires 2-party consent, but I was documenting threats for Mason. "Florence, don't you Florence me. Eugene will never forgive you for this. You'll die alone, and he won't come to your funeral. Are you finished?" "Finished? I'm just starting. I'll make sure you never see Emily again. I'll tell her what a hateful person you are." I let her rant for 2 minutes. Threats, accusations, venom. When she paused for breath, I spoke one sentence. "You stole from your husband and from me. The law will decide." I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I unplugged it from the wall jack, wound the cord around it, placed it in a drawer. She couldn't harass me if I was unreachable. My cell number belonged only to Eugene and Mason. Eugene called the next morning. His voice broke. "Dad, Emily's crying every time she sees me now. Florence told her I'm choosing you over her." "Eugene, listen carefully. Document every refusal to let you see Emily, every time she uses your daughter as leverage. What if the court believes her? What if they think I'm unstable for suing my wife? Your wife stole $500,000. The evidence proves that. Any judge will see she's manipulating Emily to avoid accountability. I feel like I'm hurting Emily just by fighting back. You're protecting Emily from growing up thinking stealing is acceptable. That's good parenting." That afternoon, I returned from the pharmacy carrying my heart medication refill. $90, painful, but necessary. I opened my front door to find papers scattered across the living room floor like snow. My investigation wall dismantled. The coffee maker lay smashed in the sink. Clara stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, smirking. Oops, I was dusting and knocked some papers down. So much clutter in this house. I didn't call out, didn't rush to gather papers. First, I photographed the scene from multiple angles, documented the deliberate destruction. "Clara, what happened here?" "Oh, I was cleaning. Maybe you did it yourself. You're old. You forget things." "You'll be hearing from my attorney about your eviction date." "This is my home too. Florence said I can stay as long as I want." "Florence doesn't own this house. I do. And you have no lease." I gathered my most critical documents, originals of the unsigned house transfer, personal bank statements, pension papers, carried them to my bedroom with my laptop. From the closet, I retrieved an old fireproof document box from my fire chief days, locked everything inside. I texted the destruction photos to Mason. "Need eviction papers filed immediately." His response came within minutes. "Filing tomorrow morning." That night, I lay on my bed fully clothed, hands behind my head. Clara could destroy copies. The originals were safe. Let her think she'd won this moment. Another text from Mason arrived. Florence retained counsel, Philadelphia firm, prepare for countersuit. I read the message twice, so she was hiring local firepower. Good. Let her waste money on lawyers while the evidence buried her. I turned off the light and waited for her next move. January arrived with bitter cold and thin gray skies. I stood at my mailbox on a Tuesday afternoon, pulling out a thick envelope. Return address: Whitmore and Associates, a Philadelphia law firm. I opened it, standing on the frozen sidewalk, breath misting in the air. Countersuit, filed against me personally. The claims were vicious: defamation, emotional distress, elder abuse allegations. They sought $200,000 in damages. The narrative described me as a confused elderly man with declining mental faculties who has fabricated accusations against his devoted daughter-in-law. My jaw tightened. I read all 15 pages standing in the cold, then refolded them precisely, walked inside, called Mason immediately. In his office an hour later, I spread the countersuit across his desk. Can they compel a mental evaluation? Mason sighed heavily. Standard defense playbook for the wealthy. Attack your credibility, paint you as mentally incompetent, make your evidence seem like delusions. He pointed to the signature. Richard Whitmore, senior partner, $500 an hour. He's crafted a narrative. The money was a family investment fund. Your accusations stem from age-related confusion. How do we counter this? File your medical records proving cognitive competence. Depose Clara under oath. Expose her financial dependence on Florence. The countersuit included Clara's affidavit, signed and notarized. She testified I was increasingly forgetful, had unprovoked angry outbursts, made false accusations about family members. Cold fury settled in my chest. 3 years she'd lived in my house, and now she was destroying my credibility. We'll discredit her easily, Mason said, seeing my expression. She has financial motive to protect her daughter. 2 days later, Eugene filed for divorce in San Francisco Superior Court, petitioning for full custody of Emily. His grounds: Florence's documented financial misconduct, manipulation of their daughter, refusal to allow court-ordered visitation. Florence's response was immediate, an emergency motion claiming Eugene was unstable and influenced by his mentally declining father, making him a danger to Emily. The judge denied the motion but scheduled a custody evaluation. Eugene called that evening. Dad, she filed an emergency motion claiming I'm unstable. Did the judge grant it? No, but there's going to be a custody evaluation. Some social worker will interview both of us. Good. Let them evaluate her. Let them see how she manipulates Emily. What if Emily says bad things about me? Florence has been coaching her. Evaluators are trained to spot parental alienation. Trust the process and trust that you're a good father. Then Florence played another card. A Bay Area lifestyle blogger, someone who covered wealthy families' charitable work, published a piece titled, "Local Philanthropist Faces Heartbreaking Family Crisis." I found it through a web search. The article portrayed Florence as a devoted wife and mother torn apart by her husband's cruel father. It described her charitable board positions, bought with stolen money, and the tragic situation where Eugene's elderly father had created divisions in their marriage. The comments section overflowed with sympathy for Florence. I showed Mason the article. He nodded grimly. Media manipulation. She's building public narrative to pressure Eugene. But it also helps us. How? Jury trials aren't won with spreadsheets alone. They're won with pictures that make people angry. We need visual proof of the luxurious lifestyle those withdrawals funded. Photos of her Hermès collection, jewelry, the golf club, the Napa villa. Eugene has access to their home. It's time to document everything. I called Eugene that night. You still have keys to the house? Technically, why? Go there when Florence is out. Photograph everything. Her closet, jewelry, purchase receipts, anything that shows where the money went. Isn't that illegal? It's still your residence. You have legal right to access your own home. 3 days later, Eugene uploaded files to a secure cloud folder. I sat at my laptop reviewing them with Mason. Florence's walk-in closet, 40 Hermès bags lined up like trophies, designer shoes still in boxes, jewelry on velvet trays, her office safe, code was Emily's birthday, contained membership certificates, purchase receipts, bank statements. Retail value of those bags alone, Mason said, probably $200,000. Meanwhile, I returned home to find Clara cooking in my kitchen, using my groceries, making elaborate meals she'd eat alone while I got whatever remained. She smirked when she saw me. "How was your day, Porter?" I walked past her to my room without answering. Won't engage, won't give her ammunition for another affidavit about aggressive behavior. Mason arranged a cognitive assessment at Pennsylvania Hospital. I sat through 2 hours of memory tests, logic puzzles, psychological evaluations. The neuropsychologist, Dr. Elizabeth Warren, was thorough, professional. When she finished, she delivered her conclusion. "Mr. Kennedy, you scored exceptionally well. No signs of cognitive decline, dementia, or mental instability. Your memory is excellent, reasoning skills intact. In fact, your scores are above average in several categories. Can you put that in writing? I'll prepare a detailed report for your attorney." I carried the notarized medical report to Mason's office personally, handed it over with quiet satisfaction. That evening, Mason called. "Discovery phase begins next week. We'll depose Clara and subpoena Florence's financial records." I looked at the photos Eugene had sent. Bags worth more than my annual pension. Jewelry that could have paid for years of medical care. The evidence was building into an avalanche. Let her lawyers spin their stories. The truth was documented, notarized, and photographed. I just needed patience. February brought ice storms and power outages to Philadelphia. I sat in Mason's conference room, watching him spread documents across a long table like battle plans. Discovery phase had begun, the legal process where both sides must share evidence. Mason had subpoenaed Florence's complete financial records from the past 5 years. Eugene, working with his divorce attorney in California, had legal authority to access joint accounts. Together, they'd compiled what Mason called a financial autopsy. Mason brought in Gerald Morrison, a forensic accountant who specialized in fraud cases. Morrison was 58, meticulous, wore reading glasses on a chain. He spent 3 days analyzing the trust account statements, Florence's personal credit cards, Eugene's bank records. His report was 47 pages long. I sat at Mason's conference table while Morrison presented his findings. He pointed to specific transactions with a pen, explaining patterns I'd already noticed but couldn't prove with professional certainty. "Mr. Kennedy, in 30 years of forensic accounting, I've rarely seen such blatant misappropriation. Every dollar is documented. Is the evidence sufficient for court? Sufficient? It's overwhelming. The trust account received exactly $480,000. Not a single withdrawal correlates to medical expenses. Every transaction went to luxury goods and services." Mason leaned forward. "Can Florence claim any legitimate use of these funds?" "She could try, but the spending pattern is unambiguous. Personal enrichment, zero healthcare costs." The breakdown was damning. $47,000 on Hermes purchases, $63,000 on jewelry, $85,000 for golf club initiation, $48,000 in membership dues over 4 years, $52,000 on spa and beauty treatments, $91,000 on luxury travel, $94,000 on restaurant and entertainment expenses. Every transaction categorized, dated, documented. Late February, Eugene called with another discovery. His voice sounded hollow, broken. "Dad, I found emails. Florence. She wrote terrible things about you, about me. Send them to Mason. She called you senile, called me a fool, said I work like a slave while she spends our money. Eugene, listen. Her words prove our case. They show consciousness of wrongdoing, contempt, deliberate deception. I feel sick reading them." The emails arrived that afternoon. I printed them at the library, 138 pages, costing me $13.80. Sat at a library table for 2 hours, reading methodically, highlighting key phrases. One email to her friend Stephanie from June 2023. "Eugene actually believes I'm sending his father $8K monthly. The old man is too proud to ask his son for money directly, so he has no idea. Meanwhile, I just bought my 4th Birkin. My fool husband works 80-hour weeks while I shop. Easy money." I read those words sitting alone at that library table. My hands stayed completely steady, despite the rage building inside. Another email to Clara from November 2024. "The senile old man almost figured out the property transfer. Thank goodness he can't read legal documents properly. When he dies, Eugene will inherit, and what's Eugene's is mine. Patience. I saved the file, forwarded everything to Mason, then sat in silence for 10 minutes. They'd given me everything I needed. Early March, Mason filed the ejectment action against Clara, legal term for eviction of someone with no right to occupy property. I provided documentation. Sole owner since 1987. Deed in my name only, no lease agreement, no written permission, no rent payments. Clara's response, filed through Whitmore, claimed an oral agreement where I had promised her a home for life in exchange for caregiving services. I nearly laughed. Clara's caregiving consisted of criticizing my housekeeping and eating my groceries. Mason also subpoenaed records from St. Christopher's Community Fund. Pastor Michael Reynolds provided an affidavit. I'd received $300 monthly assistance for medication costs since January 2023. I'd applied for help because my pension couldn't cover both living expenses and cardiac medication. The church verified my financial need through bank statements. No evidence of any trust account or family support. This destroyed Florence's claim that trust money was being properly used for my care. 3 days after Clara was served with eviction papers, I returned home to find my mailbox stuffed with garbage, coffee grounds, banana peels, torn papers. I didn't clean it immediately. First, I photographed it from multiple angles, texted the images to Mason. Defendant destroying property owner's mailbox. Witness harassment. Then I cleaned up wearing dish gloves, bagged everything as potential evidence. Clara watched from the living room window, arms crossed. I didn't look at her. At home, I created another physical timeline on my dining room wall, larger, more detailed this time. Used red string to connect Florence's purchases to specific dates when Eugene sent trust account payments. The visual pattern was undeniable. Eugene sends $8,000 connected to Florence buys $12,000 handbag 3 days later. Morrison later told Mason, "Your client has the mind of an investigator. He should have been an accountant." Late March, Mason called. Hearings start next month. First the eviction on April 15th, then the civil case preliminary hearing, April 22nd. Are you ready? I looked at my evidence timeline on the wall, the red strings connecting theft to luxury. Morrison's 47-page report on my dining table, the stack of Florence's emails beside it. I'd spent 3 months building this case like I used to investigate fires. Follow the evidence, document everything, let the facts speak. April would bring the first real courtroom battles. I'd waited this long, I could wait a few more weeks. April 15th arrived with spring rain and gray skies. I wore my only suit, navy blue, purchased for my retirement ceremony 8 years ago, slightly loose now after months of stress-induced weight loss. Outside the Philadelphia County Courthouse on Market Street, I watched lawyers and litigants stream through security. Mason arrived carrying a litigation bag heavy with evidence binders. Eviction hearing first, courtroom 306 at 10 o'clock. Then we prepare for the civil case preliminary hearing next week. I straightened my tie, followed him inside. Security checked my bag, notebook, pen, nothing else. I walked courthouse hallways like I once walked burning buildings, purposefully, knowing dangerous territory requires calm focus. Judge Patricia Holloway presided over the eviction hearing, mid-50s, no nonsense, 20 years on the bench. Clara sat with Whitmore, wearing an expensive dress bought with Florence's stolen money. She testified first, claiming I'd begged her to move in, promised a home for life, in exchange for helping with my declining health. I watched her lie smoothly, almost believed herself. Then Mason presented evidence, text messages from 2022, where Florence asked if Clara could stay a few months, my response agreeing to a temporary arrangement. 0 written lease agreements. When I took the stand, I sat straight, hands folded, spoke directly to Judge Holloway. I purchased this house in 1987 for $89,000. I raised my son there. After my wife passed, I lived alone until Florence asked if her mother could stay temporarily. That was 3 years ago. I want my home back. No emotion, just facts. Mason presented my house deed. Sole owner, no other names ever on title. Whitmore argued Clara provided valuable caregiving services, creating an implied contract. Judge Holloway asked Clara to detail these services. Clara stammered, Cooking meals, light housekeeping, companionship. Did you administer medications? The judge asked. No, but assist with bathing, dressing, medical appointments? Well, no, he can do those things himself. Then you were a housemate, not a caregiver. And you paid no rent for 3 years? No rent. Judge Holloway ruled from the bench. Mr. Kennedy is the sole property owner. Ms. Morales has no lease, no written agreement, and insufficient evidence of any oral contract. The court finds no legal right to occupancy. Ms. Morales must vacate by June 1st. Mr. Kennedy may change locks after that date. Ms. Morales will pay Mr. Kennedy $150 in court costs. Clara stood, face red, pointed at me. You'll regret this. You'll die alone, and no one will care. The gavel cracked down. Ms. Morales, another outburst and you'll be held in contempt. This hearing is concluded. I exited calmly, found Clara in the hallway, screaming at Florence on her phone. He's throwing me out! You said this wouldn't happen. I walked past without looking, buttoned my coat, headed for the elevator. Mason caught up. That went well. I allowed myself a small smile. One down. April 22nd. Civil case preliminary hearing. Judge Marcus Webb, presiding, 60s, former prosecutor. Reputation for cutting through legal gymnastics. Mason presented Morrison's forensic analysis. Morrison set up a laptop, projected charts onto a courtroom screen. Here, February 2020, $8,000 trust deposit. 3 days later, $6,200 Tiffany jewelry purchase on Florence Kennedy's personal credit card. The pattern repeated across 60 months. Judge Webb leaned forward, studying the screen intently. Mason presented church affidavits from Pastor Reynolds. Eugene's testimony via video deposition. He'd sent money specifically for his father's medical care. Florence managed the trust account. He never verified, I received funds until Thanksgiving. Then Florence took the stand. She wore modest clothing, calculated image management. Whitmore led her through prepared answers. The money was a family investment fund. She managed it responsibly. I was taken care of through other means. Under Mason's cross-examination, she crumbled. Mrs. Kennedy, you wrote to your friend. Eugene actually believes I'm sending his father $8,000 monthly. Did you write that? I may have, but I was being sarcastic. Sarcastic about deceiving your husband? That's not what I meant. You also wrote, the senile old man almost figured out the property transfer. Were you being sarcastic about attempting to steal Mr. Kennedy's house? Her voice broke. I wasn't trying to steal anything. Those documents were just estate planning. Estate planning without the property owner's informed consent? Mrs. Kennedy, you've testified the money was for family purposes. Show the court one medical expense for Porter Kennedy. Silence. Then, I don't have those records with me. Because they don't exist. She contradicted herself twice more under questioning. By the time Mason finished, Florence was near tears. We exited the courthouse under clearing skies. Mason assessed, Judge Webb is leaning our way. Florence's testimony damaged her credibility severely. Whitmore will probably advise settlement. 2 victories in 1 month. Clara would be gone in 6 weeks. The civil case was progressing exactly as planned. I walked to the bus stop, feeling the weight of 3 months' evidence gathering paying off. The momentum had shifted. Now came the final phase, watching everything collapse around Florence. May passed in endless depositions and legal motions, each week stretching longer than the last. Then early June brought the call I'd waited for. Mason's voice carried satisfaction even through the phone line, a warmth I'd rarely heard in our professional exchanges. Judge Webb issued his ruling. We won. Everything. I sat at my kitchen table, pen frozen over a crossword puzzle I hadn't been able to concentrate on for weeks. The clues blurred into meaningless words, my mind too occupied with waiting, calculating, preparing for any outcome. Outside, Philadelphia's summer heat shimmered off the pavement, making the air thick and heavy. Inside, the moment I'd built toward for 7 long months finally arrived. Tell me, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Mason emailed the decision immediately. I drove to the library, my old car protesting in the heat, and printed it standing at the machine while it churned out page after page. 23 pages total. I read every single word right there in the library, standing by the printer, oblivious to the other patrons moving around me. The defendant systematically misappropriated funds designated for the plaintiff's medical care over a period of 5 years. The evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates intentional deception, conscious wrongdoing, and deliberate concealment. The defendant's testimony lacked credibility and contradicted documentary evidence at multiple points. This court finds the defendant's claims of family fund management to be without merit and contradicted by her own written communications. The words felt like vindication printed in black and white, official and irrevocable. Judgment. Florence Kennedy must pay Porter Kennedy $480,000 principal, plus $87,000 interest calculated at 5% annually compounded over 5 years, plus $15,000 court costs and expert witness fees, total $582,000. The countersuit for defamation and emotional distress was dismissed with prejudice. Legal terminology meaning Florence could never refile it, never again claim I had wronged her by exposing her theft. I closed my eyes for 10 seconds, pressed my palms against the warm printer, breathed deeply the way they'd taught me in cardiac rehab. Opened them again. The words were still there. Real, final. Folded the papers precisely, placed them in my worn leather folder, walked outside into June sunshine, feeling lighter than I had in months, maybe years. Within days, Mason filed for judgment enforcement. The legal machinery moved with surprising speed once a judge had ruled. The court issued orders freezing Florence's bank accounts, every checking account, savings account, investment account in her name. She had $243,000 in various accounts, seized immediately, transferred to the court's control pending distribution to me. A second order required her to liquidate luxury assets to satisfy the remaining judgment. The Hermès collection she'd displayed like trophies, the jewelry she'd worn to charity galas bought with my stolen money, the golf club membership that had cost more than most people earned in a year, those 40 designer bags, appraised at $198,000 total, the jewelry from Tiffany and other high-end stores, $141,000. The Pacific Heights Golf Club membership she'd bragged about in her emails. She had to resign immediately, forfeiting the $85,000 initiation fee entirely. The Napa Villa was untouchable, in Eugene's name alone. The prenuptial agreement he'd wisely insisted on 5 years ago protected his pre-marriage assets, but Florence's personal treasures, every item bought with money meant for my medical care, would be auctioned to satisfy my judgment. I imagined her receiving those notices, watching her carefully curated lifestyle dismantled piece by piece. I felt no guilt about it. Late June, Eugene called with different news. His voice broke immediately. "Dad, the custody evaluator's report came back. I got full custody. Florence only gets supervised visits." I sat down slowly in my kitchen chair, the relief washing over me like cool water. "Emily's safe with you. That's what matters most." The evaluator wrote that Florence showed concerning patterns of parental alienation, that she coached the child's responses, and prioritized her own interests over the child's emotional well-being. It's all there in black and white, Dad. The court saw exactly what she was doing. Courts see through manipulation eventually, son. You stood firm, documented everything like I told you. This is the result of your patience and strength. I'm bringing Emily to visit you next month. She needs to know her grandfather properly, without Florence's poison between us. I'd like that very much, son. Florence's divorce attorney had negotiated the prenuptial agreement 5 years ago when she married Eugene. Standard Silicon Valley tech executive prenup. Separate property stays separate. Marital assets divided equally, but with fraud exceptions that void all favorable terms. Since the court had officially found Florence committed financial fraud against family members, those exceptions triggered automatically. She received only $150,000, exactly half of the joint savings they had accumulated during the marriage, instead of the $5 million she'd demanded. Eugene kept the San Francisco house, all his company stock options, his retirement accounts, everything he'd built through his own work. Florence signed the divorce agreement in July. Her attorney, Whitmore, advised her that fighting further would cost more in legal fees than she could possibly win. The fraud judgment destroyed any sympathy a judge might have had for her position. Mid-July, I received a check from the court, $200,000, the first distribution from Florence's seized accounts. I held it carefully, this rectangle of paper representing justice quantified in the dollars and cents. Drove to my local bank branch, walked inside with hands that shook slightly despite my attempts at control. I stood in line behind a young mother depositing her child's birthday money, an elderly man cashing his Social Security check. Regular people, my people, living regular lives. When my turn came, I slid the check across the counter to the teller who'd processed my modest pension deposits for 8 years. Her eyes widened. "Mr. Kennedy, I'll need to get the manager to verify this amount." "I understand. I'll wait." The manager came out, examined the check, saw the court seal, the official signatures. She smiled at me with genuine warmth. "Congratulations, sir. This is quite a windfall." "Justice," I corrected gently. "Not a windfall. Justice." They processed the deposit. My account balance, which had hovered around $47 for months of this legal battle, jumped to $200,047. I received a receipt, folded it carefully into my wallet next to my fire department retirement ID card, 2 pieces of paper representing who I'd been and what I'd accomplished. Mason called that evening, his voice carrying professional satisfaction. "More payments will follow as Florence's luxury goods sell at auction. Full judgment satisfaction expected by September at the latest." I visited Mason's office the day after the ruling. He had champagne waiting, grocery store brand, nothing expensive, which somehow made it more appropriate. He poured 2 glasses. I raised mine in the toast, but didn't drink, just held it. He knew about my heart medication interactions. Mason laughed warmly. "Just hold it then. Old. The gesture counts." We spent 2 hours discussing enforcement strategy, asset seizure procedures, payment schedules, collection timelines. What happens if Florence tried to hide assets or declare bankruptcy? I asked questions about every step, wanting to understand the complete machinery of justice grinding Florence into accountability. This was my fire chief training. Understand the system, know every component, anticipate every variable. June 1st, Clara's court-ordered eviction deadline, I changed all my locks. She'd already moved most of her belongings to California over the previous week, fleeing to live with her equally disgraced daughter. But she'd left debris deliberately, garbage stuffed in closets, broken dishes hidden in cabinets, a final petty act of spite. I spent that entire day cleaning, bagging trash, scrubbing surfaces she'd contaminated, found sticky residue on my kitchen counters, stains on the carpet, evidence of 3 years of disrespect for my home. By evening, exhausted but satisfied, my house was truly mine again for the first time in 3 years. I sat in my living room, quiet, empty, peaceful, and felt the silence like a blessing. Made myself scrambled eggs and toast, ate at my own table without criticism, without hostility, without someone watching me with contempt. Small victory, but sweet as summer air. Early July, Eugene flew to Philadelphia with Emily for their first long weekend visit. I picked them up at the airport, my 14-year-old Honda still running, despite its age, and the check engine light that had been on for 2 years. Emily burst through the arrival gate and saw me waiting. She ran, no hesitation, no fear, no traces of Florence's poison in her bright 5-year-old face. I lifted her, my back protesting loudly, but I ignored every twinge. She weighed almost nothing and everything simultaneously. She chattered immediately about kindergarten, about her room at Daddy's house, about a book she was reading, about everything except her mother. Smart kid, resilient kid. Mason called with the final accounting numbers. The auction house sold Florence's Hermes collection, 40 bags, $198,000 total. The jewelry sold for $141,000. Golf club membership forfeited provided another $85,000. That covers the full judgment amount? With the bank accounts, yes. Actually, $567,000 total collected, $15,000 over the judgment, which I'm returning to you as required by law. My contingency fee comes to $170,100. Your net recovery, $396,900. $400,000 she stole, $400,000 returned, balance restored. Plus, you have your house back, your son has his daughter, and Florence has nothing but a fraud judgment following her credit report forever. She'll never get a loan, never pass a background check, never escape what she did. Justice, Mr. Mason, that's all I ever wanted. Not revenge, not destruction, just justice, fairly applied. I told Mason I had specific plans for the money, plans that honored what it was meant for in the first place, family and future, caring for the next generation. The check sat on my table, paper proof that justice could prevail when you built your case brick by brick, followed every rule, refused to quit even when exhausted. But the real victory wasn't the money in my account. The real victory was Emily's laugh in my living room, Eugene's peace of mind, my house quiet and mine, Florence's power over my family shattered completely. I'd call Eugene tomorrow to discuss the education fund for Emily. Tonight, I'd just sit in my quiet house, finally completely mine again, and rest. August arrived with thick Philadelphia humidity and the persistent chorus of cicada songs that marked the peak of summer. I sat on my front porch, the same porch where this entire journey had begun 9 months ago on that terrible Thanksgiving afternoon, watching neighborhood kids bike past on their way to the corner store, their laughter carrying on the heavy air. My porch had a fresh coat of paint, gleaming white in the afternoon sun. First money I'd spent from the judgment. $380 for supplies from the hardware store, then 3 full days of work doing it myself. Scraping away the old, flaking paint felt symbolic, removing the evidence of neglect, of years when I couldn't afford such luxuries, when every dollar went to survival. Each brushstroke was meditation, reclamation, restoration. The house behind me was truly mine again in every sense. Clara's hostile presence erased completely. New locks installed on every door, every room cleaned and reclaimed. No more finding garbage in my mailbox. No more criticism about my cooking. No more feeling like an unwelcome guest in my own home. On the small wicker table beside my chair sat a thick folder from Mason. Final accounting documents, estate planning paperwork, and a cashier's check for the remaining judgment balance. Everything in perfect order. Everything finally resolved. Early August, I'd met with Mason and an estate planning attorney he recommended, Margaret Chen, a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in protecting assets for retirees. We spent 3 hours in her office creating an irrevocable trust. My house would transfer to the trust structure upon my passing, with Eugene and Emily listed as the sole beneficiaries. This legal barrier would prevent any future attempts by Florence, her creditors, or anyone else from making claims against the property that had been in my family for 38 years. I also updated my will with meticulous care. The remaining judgment money, every dollar of my net recovery, would fund an education trust for Emily, managed by Eugene as trustee until she turned 25 years old. Mr. Kennedy, this trust structure creates an impenetrable legal barrier protecting the house from any future claims. Margaret Chen had explained, her fingers tracing the organizational chart she'd drawn. Upon your passing, ownership transfers directly to the named beneficiaries through the trust vehicle. It bypasses probate entirely. Can Florence contest any of this? I'd asked, needing to hear the answer, even though I'd already researched it myself. An irrevocable trust is extremely difficult to challenge under any circumstances. Combined with the fraud judgment of public record against her, she would have absolutely no legal standing. Any attorney she consulted would advise her not to waste her money trying. I'd signed those documents with the same careful precision I'd once used to sign fire investigation reports after 32 years in the department. My signature, witnessed and notarized, protecting my family's future. The documents went into my old fireproof document box that same evening, stored safely with my pension papers and the deed to the house. Through Eugene, I'd learned the specific details of Florence's current circumstances, not from any sense of satisfaction or vindictive pleasure, but from the practical need to ensure she couldn't threaten my family again. Knowledge was protection. Understanding her limitations gave me peace. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Oakland, California, in a neighborhood far removed from the wealthy enclaves she'd once frequented. $1,800 monthly rent, more than she could comfortably afford on her new salary. She worked as an administrative assistant at a medical office, earning $42,000 annually, less than a tenth of what Eugene earned, barely above the poverty line for the Bay Area's crushing cost of living. Her carefully curated social media presence had been deleted entirely. No more photos of luxury brunches, designer bags, charity galas. Her phone number had changed. Former friends from the charity boards, the women she'd impressed with stolen money, wouldn't return her calls. The fraud judgment was public record, searchable by anyone. her reputation permanently toxic in the social circles she'd valued so desperately. Clara lived with her daughter now, sleeping on a futon in the living room of that cramped apartment, two bitter women trapped together in the consequences of their shared greed and failed schemes. Apparently they fight constantly, Eugene had told me during one of our regular phone calls. Florence blames Clara for giving testimony that backfired and made the case worse. Clara blames Florence for being stupid enough to document everything in emails. My attorney heard it from Florence's lawyer. They're barely speaking to each other, but can't afford to live separately. They deserve each other, I'd said simply, and I'm grateful they're 3,000 miles away from all of us. Mid-August brought the visit I'd been anticipating, with growing excitement. Eugene and Emily flew in for a long weekend, planned weeks in advance with the careful coordination of a father managing custody schedules and a grandfather preparing for precious time with family. I'd prepared the spare bedroom, Emily's room now, I'd decided with quiet joy, with fresh sheets that smelled of lavender detergent, a colorful quilt I'd found at a thrift store, and a small stuffed animal from the toy store, a plush fire truck, a gentle nod to Grandpa's career. When Emily discovered it on her pillow, her face lit up with pure delight that made my chest ache with happiness. Saturday, we spent the day at the Philadelphia Zoo. Eugene drove us in his rental car, but I navigated, pointing out landmarks, sharing stories of bringing Eugene here as a child decades ago. Emily ran between exhibits with boundless energy, holding both men's hands, asking endless questions that revealed her sharp, curious mind. I walked slowly through the zoo paths, my pace limited by age and my heart condition, the same condition Florence had used as an excuse to steal, but Emily matched my speed without complaint or impatience. She seemed content to be with us, unburdened by the weaponized anxiety Florence had tried to instill. At the primate house, watching gorillas interact through the thick glass, Emily asked, with innocent curiosity, why monkeys live in families. Because everyone needs people who protect them and love them, I told her, squeezing her small hand gently. Family means looking out for each other, keeping each other safe. Eugene caught my eye over Emily's head, his expression complex, gratitude, understanding, residual pain from Florence's betrayal, but mostly hope for the future. He nodded slowly, and I knew he understood what I'd really done. Not just recovered money, but protected his daughter from growing up thinking that manipulation and theft were acceptable. Sunday morning on the porch, in the golden light of early day, I taught Emily to use my old binoculars, Bushnell brand, purchased in 1994 when Eugene was a teenager, still perfectly functional. I showed her how to adjust the focus wheel, how to stay still so the birds wouldn't startle, how to identify different species by their colors and behaviors. That's a cardinal. See the bright red one? That's the male. The brown one next to him is the female. They mate for life and stay together year-round. Emily repeated the information with serious concentration, delighted by each new bird we spotted. Eugene made coffee in my kitchen, watching us through the screen door, and I saw him wipe his eyes once when he thought we weren't looking. Later that morning, while Emily played in the small backyard I'd finally had time to clean up properly, Eugene and I discussed the financial plan in detail. I want the judgment money to go to Emily's education. All of it, I told him firmly. Every dollar of the net recovery. Dad, you should keep that money, Eugene protested, though his tone suggested he'd expected this. You earned it. You fought for it. You deserve to enjoy it. I fought to expose theft and protect my family, I corrected him gently. The money was always supposed to help the next generation. It still will, just differently than Florence intended. Emily's education is the right use. It's what your mother would have wanted. Mason had calculated, using conservative investment projections, that the $396,900 would grow to approximately $750,000 by the time Emily reached college age, enough for undergraduate and graduate degrees at any university she chose, with money left over for her future. Your mother and I saved carefully for your education, I said, memories of those years bringing a bittersweet ache. We went without things we wanted so you could have opportunities. Now, I'm doing the same for Emily. It feels right. It completes the circle, honors your mother's memory, and ensures Florence's theft ultimately serves the purpose it was supposed to serve, helping family. Eugene's eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. She would have loved Emily so much. She would have, I agreed, my own voice thick. And she'd absolutely approve of this plan. I know she would. Sunday evening, as the sun began its descent and the air finally cooled slightly, I drove them to the airport in my old Honda. Emily fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from 2 days of adventure and activity, her stuffed fire truck clutched in her arms. At the departure terminal, Eugene lingered after Emily went ahead with the gate agent, his face showing he wanted to say something important. "Dad, I'm sorry." His voice was raw with emotion. "Sorry I didn't see what Florence was sooner. Sorry I didn't verify the money was reaching you. I should have called you directly. Should have asked for confirmation. Sorry I let her isolate you from us, from Emily. Sorry for being blind for so long." I gripped his shoulder firmly, looking directly into his eyes that mirrored my own. "Eugene, listen to me. You trusted your wife? That's not a character flaw. That's the foundation of marriage. You're supposed to trust your partner. When you learned the truth, you didn't make excuses, you didn't try to protect her, you didn't ask me to drop the case. You stood by what was right even when it cost you your marriage and made everything harder. That's who you are. That's the man I raised. I'm proud of you, son." We embraced tightly, and I felt his shoulders shake slightly. He walked toward security, stopped at the checkpoint, turned back one final time, waved. I waved back, watching until he disappeared completely from view, then drove home through August twilight with the radio playing softly. Back on my porch as darkness fell and streetlights flickered on, I held a photograph Eugene had texted me from the zoo visit, him and Emily laughing at the penguin exhibit, both their faces bright with genuine joy. The evening air was warm and thick, cicadas singing their persistent August song, neighbors calling to each other from their own porches. My house, my peace, my family, all restored not through luck or grace, but through patience, systematic evidence gathering, and absolute refusal to surrender to injustice even when exhausted. The fight was over. Justice had prevailed. Not because good always wins in some fairy tale fashion, but because I'd built an unassailable case brick by methodical brick, followed every legal rule precisely, documented everything obsessively, and trusted the system to work when given truth. I set the photo on the table next to my empty coffee mug, closed my eyes, and listened to my quiet street, the sound of ordinary life, peaceful life, life without fear or hostility. This was real victory, not Florence's destruction, though that had happened as natural consequence. Not revenge, though some might call it that. This victory was my family's protection, Emily's secure future, Eugene's freedom from manipulation. This was peace earned through perseverance. This was justice properly served. I sat on my freshly painted porch in my reclaimed home, surrounded by the sounds of a Philadelphia summer evening, and finally rested. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.